here.
Good. Okay, y'all, I think we're heading live. It's setting it up.
Okay.
Okay. Y'all can chat along. I think we are probably live at this moment. I'm trying to let me somehow I've lost.
I'm checking on my end.
Okay. Yep, we are live.
All right.
All right. Hey everybody. So here we are again Tuesday night. Thanks for joining us. We're really excited tonight. We have a coaching colleague that's joining us, and we all went through our coaching certification program at IPEC together. So it's kind of like reunited and it feels good. So if you're joining in with us on Facebook tonight, thank you for coming and being a part of this conversation, and let us know you're here, who you are, where you're showing up from. We always love to hear how far our reach is. Although we do have, let's see, Charlotte, Minnesota, and Texas represented. Did I say that right? Andrea? Anyway, we're coming from all parts, but we'll tell you about that. So tell us where you're coming from. We've got thunderstorms here. Looks like it's beautiful in Texas. But share with us. If you're joining us on a replay, still let us know you're here. Give us a shout out. We love to see your faces and the interactions. So for those of you joining, and those of you who don't know us, I'm Ann Barwick, and I am the co-founder of the Risk Takers Dream Makers. And we love to share stories of women that are pursuing their passionate purpose. And we love to inspire women who are interested in pursuing their passionate purpose. So it's a win-win project. I'm also a certified coach and owner of company A Strong You, where I do leadership and self-development coaching. And I will let my co-founder, Andrea Kiesling, introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Ann. Yes, I'm Andrea Kiesling, co-founder of RTDM and also founder of Andrea Kiesling Coaching, where I do values, mindset, and accountability coaching. And as Ann mentioned, our mission through RTDM is just celebrating the stories of everyday women living their dream in hopes to inspire others to do the same. And we are especially excited today to have one of those very people living their dream. Jennifer Ballou is on with us tonight. And before I get into Jennifer's introduction, I want to just remind you that these talks are very interactive, so we certainly encourage you to ask questions. Jen has been kind enough to allow us to do that, and we'll do our best to get to all the questions. Or if you have any comments or anything like that, please feel free to put that in the comments. So I'm going to use my notes here so I don't get anything wrong. Jennifer Ballou, she served our country for 21 years in the Army. So Jen, of course, we are so grateful to you for that. And during her deployment in Afghanistan, her husband was killed in action. And Jen uses her experience to help others now view life transitions as opportunities to grow and become happier and more resilient people, just as Jen has done. And Jen is a certified professional coach. She is a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. She is core leadership and well-being dynamic specialist. She's a BirthFit certified coach. She's a CrossFit level 2 trainer. And she's the mom of 3. That's a whole lot. And Jen, we're so excited for you to be with us tonight. Thank you. We want to give you the floor to just kind of talk a little bit about your story and tell us more about you.
Thank you, ladies, so much for having me. And thank you, everyone who's joining us this evening. I am currently here from my back porch so that I can kind of hide from my children. So it's a little windy back here, so bear with me. But this is going to be my hideout spot for the next hour. So like Andrea said, my name is Jen Ballou. I am a women's wellness and life coach. I am a registered yoga teacher. I'm the mother of 3. So bear with me. And this is good. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, sorry.
Sorry,
And I'm also it's okay. And I'm also a retired Army veteran. Currently living in Central Texas, and can wholeheartedly say that I'm living a life filled with happiness and fulfillment. But I also have to say that it hasn't always been that way. And the journey to get here has been had a lot of turns and bumps and bruises along the way. I joined the Army when I was 18 years old, about 3 weeks after I graduated high school. And although I had no idea what I was getting myself into, because no one in my family in recent years had served in the military, I loved the Army from the very first day of basic training. I think a big reason for that is that I thrive in situations that are structured, full of discipline, and have a direction in mind, if that makes sense. But that can also be a blessing and a curse. I got married and had my first child very young. I was barely 21 years old, and very shortly thereafter found myself a single young mother raising a daughter, and very quickly realized what it felt like to struggle and have to work for things and manage my time, and decided that the two things that were really most important to me were my career and raising my daughter. In no way was I interested in or looking to meet anyone or fall in love. And so when you hear me say that, you probably know where the story's going. I met somebody when I least expected it. In 2004, I met a gentleman by the name of Eddie Laredo, and there was just an instant connection. Eddie was a wonderful man, and we dated for several years before getting married in 2007. He was a soldier as well, and so we were a dual military couple, both serving, and that brought a ton of challenges in itself. One of us was home while the other one was going. A lot of the times we're high-fiving in the parking lot, handing the kids off, who's taking who to daycare. But we made it work, and it was amazing. Let's see. I'm trying to not get long-winded here, and I'm sort of referring to some notes because I don't want to tell everything, but there's certain things that I feel are super important to share. In 2007, we had our son, Eddie. And during that time, my husband, Eddie, was actually deployed to Iraq. And so he made it home in time to see our son born, but then quickly left again 2 weeks later. So that's just to paint a picture that when I say he wasn't really around, or, if he was home, I was gone, that's really the way it was. So for most of Eddie's first few years of life, he wasn't around his father. In 2010 was really a pivotal year for my family for a couple of different reasons. First of all, was because Eddie and I were both going to be deployed at the same time. And a lot of people, especially non-military people, think like, wow, I can't even believe that would happen, where both parents would be deployed at the same time. But that's the situation that we found ourselves in. And it was only going to be a very short period of time that we were both in Afghanistan. So Eddie was sort of on the tail end of his tour there, and I was on the beginning of mine, when on June 24th, 2010, Eddie was killed in action. And although we knew by nature of his job, he was an infantryman, we knew that was a possibility. It just wasn't something that I really ever thought was going to happen. And so, as you can probably imagine, my life quickly changed in ways that I wasn't prepared for and I didn't see coming. until many years later. So I found myself escorting my husband's body back to the United States so that we could bury him at Arlington National Cemetery. And those first days, weeks, and months of after Eddie's loss are honestly a blur. There are things that I remember, but it was just kind of like survival mode. And a lot of times, it's been 10 years now. A lot of times when people say to me, I don't know how you did it, I just really don't feel like I had much of a choice. And I know I did, but in my mind, I had 2 young children who, if they didn't need me before, they certainly needed me now. And so my strength was my children. I retired in 2015, like we said. And so from 2010 to 2015, there were so many lessons, all of which I'm tremendously grateful for. And although I can't share all of them, one thing that I do want to share is that I had the blessing and the opportunity to work on the Army's resilience program at both the installation level, so like at the level serving the entire Army base in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then I served with the program at the Army level in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon. And I learned so many things over those years, a lot of which really just helped me grow and self-reflect and understand that we can teach people to be resilient. So for so long, I just thought either you have it or you don't. Either you're resilient or you're not. But what the science says is that when you practice certain skills, you can, in fact, become more resilient. I also learned how to teach those skills to other people. And so unbeknownst to me, I was really sort of going through the healing process in a unique way because I was having the opportunity to share my story as well as teach these valuable life skills that I still use today. So I retired in 2015, which is another kind of pivotal year for me, because not only did I retire, but I also took a huge step in dating again. And just like I said, when I kind of spoke briefly about how I met Eddie and the situation I was in, I found myself again in a place where finding love just was the last thing on my mind. I had really no interest in it, to be perfectly honest. And just given my history, I just didn't see that for myself. But I met a gentleman named Omari, who I served with at the Pentagon, who is the most understanding, respectful, caring man that I just ever could imagine. And Omari is now my husband. And we have a daughter together named Sophia. She's almost 18 months old. We were just kind of chatting about it a few minutes ago because, you know, I've learned so many things over the last 10 years, one of which is to never say never, because I've said it time and time again. And I would have told you that I would never be retired, remarried, and having a baby. And that's what has happened. So never say never. If there's anything you take away from my story, it's to never say never. But I'm so grateful, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And when I try to explain or talk about that, it's a little bit confusing, and it's actually, it does make me sad because, you know, I am where I am today because of the sacrifice that Eddie made for me and for all of you. And I have always vowed to honor his memory and keep it alive. And I do that in any and every way that I possibly can. So I just want to share, kind of wrapping up before we start answering questions, that it wasn't until later in life that I really began to explore the things that I'm truly passionate about, and as well as understanding the importance of not being able to pour from an empty cup. And most importantly, how to create the life that I want to live. And now I'm blessed to be able to help other women do just that through my coaching practice. The final bit of wisdom that I would like to share is that when you decide or realize that you're ready to start creating and living the life that you want to live, remember that it isn't going to happen overnight. Dedicate yourself to the process and allow yourself to be open to the journey. So I'll just kind of pause there and you guys tell me what's next.
Yeah, well, Jen, thank you for sharing that story. And it's important. Your story is not only inspiring, but it's important for us to know about Eddie and his life and the sacrifice that he made. So, I mean, that is the ultimate sacrifice. So I'm glad that we had the opportunity to talk about him and his life too. I remember meeting you a couple of years ago and listening to your story, and just, I probably had my mouth open the whole time because I just couldn't imagine. That's just not anything I could possibly imagine, especially with two young kids in the mix. So I've just had a tremendous amount of respect for you, but the word that came to my mind in just kind of getting to know you was resiliency. And I love that that's part of what you do now. I mean, you're very uniquely positioned with the type of experiences that you've had, Jen, to help other people achieve that kind of, outcome, resiliency. So, it's just amazing to see you be able to turn the circumstances and the experience that you've had into ways to help and support others too. So before we get into this, I want to ask you to talk a little bit about the award that you received for the policy that you changed with service members as they were with spouses.
Okay. So one of the awesome opportunities that I had was to serve on a committee advising the chief of staff of the Army, who's like the 4-star general in charge of the entire Army. He had a committee of surviving family members, all different types, uniformed wearing survivors, parents, military spouses. And so, being a uniform wearing surviving spouse is a little bit different, and I saw things differently than maybe others would. And one of the things I was able to advise and eventually would get put into policy was that the Army can't force you to relocate, or as we call it, PCS, permanent change of station, within so long after losing your spouse. And the reason that came about was because very shortly after Eddie died, the Army put me on assignment to relocate to another installation. And I had to kick and scream and really make a big deal about that before they were willing to reconsider it. So we were able to create a policy that would help spouses in similar situations not have to just add more stress to the plate that is already overflowing, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that many people are thankful for the road that you paved in doing so, because I can imagine the additional stress that would add to an already, very stressful situation. So that's amazing, Jen. Congratulations on making change. So let's shift gears a little bit and tell us, in recent years, you've done a lot, it looks like, from coaching to the birth fit to yoga. Talk a little bit about how you're spending your time these days.
Yeah. So, my ultimate goal is to help women navigate change and live a whole and joyful life. And so that's kind of broad. That's a big task to take on. And I believe wholeheartedly that if you create habits in your day-to-day life that lead you to living what you determine to be a whole and happy life, then if and when some sort of change or challenge comes about, you will be able to face that and deal with it a lot better than if you weren't living a whole and happy life before it happened. And so one of the things that I think is really helpful with that is taking care of yourself, eating well, sleeping properly, exercising, practicing mindfulness. And so I just kind of felt like if I'm really going to help women on that journey, I need to become educated in all of those areas, at least at some level, to be able to coach them in the direction that they want to move in. So that's sort of how I'm spending my time.
Yeah, that's great. So Jen, what do you think about you that it was that allowed you to make this transition so gracefully? And maybe that's a perspective from the outside, because that may not have been how you felt. But you know, in the last since I've known you, you've had a ton of major life milestones. How have you again, from the outside, how have you so gracefully made those transitions and just kind of continued to switch gears in the way that you have?
Thank you so much. First of all, I appreciate you saying that it's been graceful, because I surely don't feel that way. But I feel like when there's a challenge, no matter how big or how small, somewhere in there's an opportunity, and it might take a while to figure out what that is. But that's just sort of how I look at things. So for example, before I got pregnant with Sophia, I mean, we had just finished IPEC, and I had started the very bare bones of my coaching business and got remarried. And we knew we were going to be relocating to Texas when I got pregnant. And I could have very easily just put everything on hold. But I chose to get educated on prenatal and postpartum fitness, mindset, nutrition, and connection through an organization called BirthFit. So I guess I just say that all to say it hasn't been graceful. There's been a lot of tears and a lot of stress and a lot of frustration, but just sort of looking for the silver lining, if you will, just seems to work for me.
So talk a little bit about BirthFit. I know that that's something, a more recent development. Tell us a little bit about what with BirthFit.
Yeah, BirthFit is an organization that supports women throughout their entire motherhood transition, from preconception, so just when you even think that you might want to get pregnant at some point, through pregnancy, and then postpartum. And BirthFit's philosophy is that postpartum is forever. So we're supporting women through this whole journey of motherhood. And it's founded on 4 pillars, which are fitness, nutrition, mindset, and connection, which when I learned that, I just fell in love with it, because those were really, I worded them a little differently, but those were the pillars of, you know, how I see health and wellness for women as well. So once I learned about the organization, I started doing some research and went to their coaches seminar, and eventually became a BirthFit coach and leader, and had been doing some work with prenatal and postpartum women in all of those areas. And it's just been so rewarding, because you know, all women can use support throughout their lives, but what a great time to just have somebody to support you and help you find the answers and continue to live a healthy life during a time that can be so scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to say, I think it's amazing and so so in line with your life, Jennifer, just watching you. I know we got to kind of watch you go through this last pregnancy, and you know, it's just mind blowing the way that you kept your body strong through it. And I imagine it also kept mental strength there with the workouts that you did. Yeah. So it makes sense that you are leading other women through this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and also, so time, I mean, your experiences are really relevant and I'm sure help you a great deal, having just experienced it again for the third time.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I really just didn't think that I would have another pregnancy experience at this point in my life. And what a great opportunity to do it not better than the first two times, but maybe be more educated and learn about how I could do it best for me at this point in my life. And I learned so much.
Yeah, and kind of just the mindfulness of the whole experience, I'm sure.
Yeah. One thing that you said, Jennifer, that kind of is fascinating to me about this birth is that you start before conception. But what you said about even postpartum, it's always postpartum. And I think for the three of us, we're all in different stages. You have the oldest and the youngest of all of our children, Jennifer, and I have a 14 and a 16-year-old, and Andrea has young children, two and four, I believe. And it is at the stages, as I'm sure you know, Jennifer, because you've been going through them and you're starting all over again. God help you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. But it's true. It's just all the stages of motherhood. You know, you think, oh, I'll get to this stage and I won't need necessarily support, but we always need that support.
We do.
Yeah.
And that's a good point too. It's just the topic of community and building that community around, whether it be a mother, because I know that I have certainly leaned on my community during my early, well, even now in motherhood, and I'm sure you always will. So Jen, talk about how you've transitioned and kind of, you know, moved in order to accommodate current times with COVID and whatnot. Or have you still been able to provide this service to your clients?
Yeah, it's definitely, it looks a lot different. You know, when it first started, I actually we call it a postpartum series. It's a 6 to 8 week series where we meet a couple of times a week with new moms, and we do fitness stuff, but we do so much more like mindfulness and connection stuff as well. And I had it on the calendar to start the week that everything kind of shut down. And so I just thought like everything's going to be shut down for a few weeks and I'll slap it back on the calendar, you know, once things start to open back up. And here we are months later. So initially I was not really open to doing that kind of stuff online or virtually, but had a couple women reach out to me and ask me if I would be willing to consider it. And I did. And I am so glad I did. I mean, this is just where we're at right now. And you can still connect and talk and coach and do all of those things on a platform like Zoom or FaceTime or whatever the case may be. So yes, I have not only continued to see my moms as clients, but just all types of clients. I'm pretty much doing it all virtually.
Yeah. Well, and just to your point about finding the opportunity in every challenge, I think a lot of people are doing that, and it's almost, of course, this is a tough time, but it's also the silver lining is seeing the creativity and ideas that have come from this challenge and how people are overcoming that in a way to remain competitive and successful and still keep their doors open. So that's been something that has been neat for me to see. So on the topic of current events, Jen, you are uniquely positioned that you're married to a Black man and have a daughter together. Talk to us a little bit about your perspective, what, the way that we're headed and some of the things that we've been facing recently. Talk about how racism has impacted your life, your family, or any experiences that you want to discuss related to that.
Wow. Yeah, so my husband Omari, he is Black, and like you said, we have a daughter together, so she's obviously part Black as well. And first of all, even before I was married to Omari and had Sophia, I have always lived a life and taught my children to love others, no matter what they look like, what their beliefs are, what their religion is, anything like that. And I just think that although the current events are so much bigger than me or you, it's got to start at home. And there's just something so powerful about how we teach our children, because children don't know any better. And also I want to mention, growing up in the Army and serving in the Army for 21 years, I've had opportunities to be around so many different types of people that maybe a lot of Americans or people in the world have not had those same opportunities because they have lived in the same place and they're only around people that are like them. So I just think that, I've been able to connect and have friendships and ultimately a marriage with somebody who might not look like me, but they're a person just like me. So, I am a white woman who, even though I'm married to a Black man, I don't know or understand what it's like to walk in, for example, Omari's shoes. So I have somebody here at home that I can talk to about those things openly and without fear of, saying the wrong thing or asking the wrong question. We can have very open and candid conversations. As well as I have friends and colleagues that are Black as well that I can do the same thing with. So even though I'm married to a Black man, that doesn't give me a ticket to knowing what the answers are, or knowing what it's like to be a Black man or a Black person in the United States of America. So I am dedicated to leaning in and learning and asking questions. And I think I would be, or I know I would be, even if we didn't have Sophia, but I do have a child that is part Black. And so I think that does make it a little bit more personal for me as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just kind of what came out.
Absolutely. And Anne, I should pause here to ask if we have any questions or if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, I appreciate you, first of all, Jennifer, sharing that point of view. And I know we've talked about it with some of our other people that we've interviewed in the past month. And it's always interesting to get the different perspectives. So thank you for being open about that. And that makes sense. Like, it does start at home. We got to talk to our kids about it. And obviously you're going to need to talk. You're going to be put in that situation to talk to Sophia about it because she's mixed race, right? But for me, with my daughters who are white, that I need to have those conversations with them and help them realize how to navigate the world and have conversations with others and make and create relationships with others that don't look just like them, just like you said.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I do have a question for you, kind of going back a little bit about how you were saying you're navigating your business during COVID. And I just think it's great that I imagine the women who are with BirthFit and the women that you're coaching, really, they need you more than ever now, right? And so it's a struggle being a mom, but then being a mom and being quarantined and navigating all the new situations that we're under, even the racism situations, right? So I want to ask you this because I know all three of us are coaches and we have found ways to be there for our clients during this time. And that's so important to help them get through it. But at the same time, you're a mom of a baby, a toddler. And so what do you do for yourself to get you to that place so you can help support your clients?
Thank you for that question, Anne. That's such a good question. And it kind of ties back to how I said, I believe it's so important to have healthy habits in place so that if and when we're faced with some sort of challenge, and in this case, it's COVID, which none of us ever would have saw coming, you should sort of be able to navigate it a little bit better than if you didn't have healthy habits. So there's a few things that are just really non-negotiable for me. And the first one is a good night's sleep. I always will make sure that I get enough sleep, even if that means I've got a deadline coming up or something important is going on tomorrow. There's just a certain time that I'm going to go to sleep. Eating properly is super important to me. Exercising is super important to me. And my yoga practice. Although some people may say that's exercise, and it can be a form of exercise, but for me, it's so much deeper than that. It's more of a spiritual, soulful way that I dedicate time to myself. So that's just sort of what I always make sure that I do for myself consistently, as well as set boundaries. So there's just certain times that I'm not willing to see clients. And if it's like, that's the only time that they're available and it's during my family time, I just can't work with that person. I mean, it's not easy, but I have to set boundaries. Otherwise, I'm just going to run myself ragged, which we all can probably relate to or have done at one point or another.
Yeah. So that kind of goes to one of the things that you answered in your Risk Takers, Dream Makers story is one of the things, like, what have you learned to say no to? And that is important. I know I've struggled with that in this clients, but I really find that clients, if you honor your time and people really need you, they will find a way to make it work, right?
Yes.
Instead of us bending over backwards because if we sacrifice that time, then I think we're not showing up as the best coaches because we're not honoring our own time, and we're coaching a lot of people about that, right?
Right.
But one of the things that you said was, that you kind of stopped doing was saying yes to everything. And now, and making sure that, what was the word, that saying no to things that spread you too thin.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a formula for knowing what that is?
I don't have a formula per se, but I just tie things back to my core values, what my values are. And, you know, if anybody listening has never done a values exercise and taken the time to really truly figure out what their values are, it's worth doing, or finding someone that can help you do it. I'm sure any of us could help them do that. But, you know, if something comes up that is not in line with my values, then it's not easy to say no to, but I understand the importance of saying no to it. If it is something that's in line with my values, but I'm already just sort of, you know, at capacity, then that's another conversation that I have to have with myself and my family, and really just sort of figure out if what's going to have to give is worth giving or not. So not a formula per se, but there is a method to the madness.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. About the core values really help at least bring the clarity about when you're making those hard decisions and trying to figure out what to juggle. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jen, you've shared some really, really helpful tips with us tonight, and we want to make sure that the people that are watching tonight, or who will watch, have a way to contact you and make sure that they can find you if they're looking for you. So would you mind giving us that information?
Sure.
And web address, that kind of thing?
Sure. So my email address is jennifer@jenniferballou.com. So JENNIFER @JenniferBallou, BALLOU.com. My website is jenniferballou.com. And then you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Coach Jennifer Ballou. And I'd love to hear from you in any of those or all of those ways.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer, we thank you again for your time tonight. And we have so enjoyed these conversations. It's, you know, like you mentioned, continuing that aspect of community as much as we can right now. And this has been a great way that we've found we can still stay connected to a lot of people and still keep conversations going. So for us, we've really enjoyed this, and we have especially enjoyed having you on with us tonight. So thank you for your time.
Thank you guys so much. It was so wonderful to be part of it.
Yeah, it was really great to be able to connect, and it's kind of fun to have, like I said, this reunion of us three. Yeah, I was wondering if, since we have a few minutes left, if we want to finish up with Jennifer doing a grounding technique with us.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to do that. So before we do just a short, quick little grounding exercise, I want to just take a moment to talk about why or when this might be helpful. So grounding exercises are typically done to help you be present. Or if you find yourself in a situation where your mind is all over the place, or you're feeling super anxious even about something, then a quick, just 1 or 2 minutes is really all you need. Grounding exercise can help bring you back to the now, the present, and or just kind of help calm the nerves a little bit. So I'd like to invite you to allow your eyes to flutter closed if that's comfortable for you, or just find a soft gaze and start to settle in. If you are sitting in a chair, just kind of try to allow the body to melt into the chair, or if you are able to lay down on the ground or on the couch, just allow yourself to become comfortable. And with your eyes closed, I'd like to ask you to allow your other senses to open up wide. Maybe you notice a smell in the air around you. Maybe you hear family members talking in the background or the TV. Maybe you hear someone cutting the grass outside. Next, I'd like you to notice the feel of the air on your skin. Maybe you feel a breeze from the ceiling fan above you, or the warm air on your skin if you're outside. Next, I'd like you to take a deep breath in through your nose. Open your mouth and exhale completely. Again, another deep breath in through the nose. Open mouth, exhale. One more deepest breath that you've taken so far today. Part your lips. Exhale completely. When you're ready, you can allow your eyes to slowly open. And obviously you can't tell me how you feel if you're doing this from home, but hopefully it brought you a little bit of relaxation and or allowed you to come back to the now.
Thank you so much for doing that, Jennifer. That's such a nice thing to have in any part of the day. And I think it would be a great thing for people to be able to watch and connect to, and remember you can do that yourself as well, right? Just take that moment during the day and notice what's going on. So get all the clutter out.
Yes. Even just a few deep breaths. The other stuff isn't necessary, but just closing the eyes and taking a few deep breaths, there's so much power behind that.
Yeah, that's a great tool to have, especially these days. We're using that a lot.
Yes, me too.
All right. So Andrew, you want to, are we wrapping up with this then?
Yeah, I believe, Anne, it's on your end tonight as the host, right? So you can.
Yeah. All right. Thank you everybody for joining us. We so appreciate y'all, and we really appreciate your time, Jennifer, with all that you have going on in your life. Thanks for sharing so many great lessons with us, and then helping us just settle our minds this evening. So
thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you again, Jen.